Welcome back. So in these videos, I'll be discussing the developmental theories. And our first developmental theorist that we'll be discussing is Freud. We learned about Freud in previous chapters and previous videos. And he viewed development as discontinuous. And he believed that each of us must pass through a series of stages during our childhood. And that if we lacked the proper nurturance and parenting during one of these stages, then we become stuck or fixated in that stage. And we learned that Freud's stages are called the psychosexual development stages. And according to Freud, children's pleasure-seeking urges are focused on a specific area of the body, as we learned, whether it's the oral, anal, phallic, or so on and so forth. So please make sure to review Freud's stages of psychosexual development, as they'll be relating to development. And another stage theorist is Erikson, who we also previously learned about. And Erikson's psychosexual development theory emphasizes the social nature of our development rather than its sexual nature, as Freud did. Erikson proposed that personality development takes place throughout the lifespan, and he suggested that how we interact with others is how it affects our sense of self and what he called the ego identity. And then Erikson proposed that we're motivated to achieve competence in certain areas of our lives, in which he broke down in different stages, as you see here, and as you learned previously. So again, please review these stages, and they go more in depth in your textbook if you want to read your textbook, and review about Erikson and Freud as well. And another stage theorist that we haven't learned about yet, or maybe just mentioned, is Jean Piaget, and he studied children's development. And Piaget focused on children's cognitive growth, in which he believed that thinking is a central aspect of development. His theory of cognitive development holds that as we progress to a new stage, there's a distinct shift in how we think and reason as a child. And Freud said that children develop schemas to help them understand the world. And when children learn about new information, they adjust their schema through two processes, either assimilation or accommodation. So first, they either assimilate new information or experiences in terms of their current schema. And assimilation is when they take in information that is comparable to what they already know. Or they can go through accommodation, which describes when they change their schema based on a new information, and this process continues as children interact with their environment. And here are Piaget's stages of cognitive development. We're going to be going through each one. So there's sensory motor, pre-operational, concrete operational, and formal operational. And the first of Piaget's stages is the sensory motor stage, which lasts from birth to about 2 years old. And during this stage, children learn about the world through their senses and motor behavior. So this children here is feeling the toy and sucking on the thumb. And he's learning about the world through his different senses. Also, in the stage, a child develops object permanence, which is an understanding that something still exists even if it is out of sight. And according to Piaget, young infants do not remember an object after it has been removed from their sight. And Piaget studied infants' reactions when a toy was first shown to an infant and then hidden under a blanket. And infants who had already developed object permanence would reach for the hidden toy, indicating that they knew that it still existed, but infants who had not developed object permanence would appear confused and think that the toy doesn't exist anymore. And here's an example. So a baby has a ball, and a parent puts the ball behind this wood block here, and because the ball is now hidden, the baby now is confused, doesn't know if the ball exists or not, and this baby would lack object permanence. And then lastly, in this stage, they develop stranger anxiety and a fear of unfamiliar people. And Piaget theorized that stranger anxiety results when a child is unable to assimilate the stranger into a pre-existing schema that they already have. The next stage is the pre-operational stage, which lasts from 2 to 7 years old. And in this stage, children can use symbols to represent words, images, and ideas, which is why children in this stage engage in pretend play. Children also begin to use language in the pre-operational stage, but they can't understand adult logic or mentally manipulate information. And children in this stage can't perform mental operations because they don't have a fully developed understanding of conservation, which is the idea that even if you change the appearance of something, it's still equal in its size as long as nothing has been added or removed. And so, for example, if we fill 2 similar glasses of water and then pour 1 glass into a longer cylinder, a child who has not developed conservation will say that this tube has more water just based off its size, even though the water amount was the same as we started before. And then also children develop egocentrism, which means that a child is not able to take the perspective of others. And at this stage, a child thinks that everyone sees, thinks, and feels just as they do. The next stage is concrete operational, in which occurs between 7 and 11 years old. And in this stage, children can think logically about real, concrete events. And they have a firm grasp on the use of numbers, and they start to use different memory strategies. In this stage, children master the concept of conservation, such as even though something changes in shape, its mass, volume, or numbers stay the same. So in this example, the child now understands conservation. So even after putting the water in a different tube, she still says that this water is the same amount as before. And then children in the concrete operational stage also understand the principle of reversibility, which means that objects can be changed and then returned back to their original form or condition. So let's say after someone pours the water into this longer tube, they then pour it back into the original glass, and the child can know that this object can be changed and returned back to its original form if put in a different glass as before. And the fourth and last stage in Piaget's theory is the formal operational stage, which is from about age 11 to adulthood. And whereas children in the concrete operational stage are able to think logically only about concrete items or concrete events, children in this stage can also deal with abstract ideas and hypothetical situations. And children in this stage can use abstract thinking to solve problems, look for alternative solutions, and also test these solutions. This is maybe the concept of thinking outside the box. And then also a new kind of egocentrism occurs in which people think that people are constantly watching or judging them, which makes us socially compare ourselves to others. So if you've ever had an acne breakout, or wanted to wear the coolest school clothes to school, you might think that everyone is looking at you and that you want to look your best, thinking that everyone is constantly watching you or judging you. And Piaget's theories come with criticism, as all theories do. One of the main critics is that several studies have revealed that these stages that Piaget had are more continuous and are strict stages of how Piaget describes them. So they're more continuous rather than stages as Piaget thinks they are. Also, Piaget kind of stops his developmental stage after adulthood. He was more interested in focusing on children, which is probably the reason why. And also, there might be a fifth developmental stage called post-formal. And this is when decisions are made based on situations and circumstances, and logic is integrated with emotion as adults develop principles that depend on different contexts. And then also, it seems that once we reach adulthood, our problem-solving abilities change. So as we attempt to solve problems, we tend to think more deeply about many different areas of our lives, such as relationships, work, or politics. And then our last theorist is Lawrence Kohlberg, which extended upon the foundation that Piaget built on cognitive development. And Kohlberg believed that moral development, like cognitive development, follows a series of stages. And he posed moral dilemmas to people of all ages, and then he analyzed their answers to find evidence of their particular stage of moral development. And Kohlberg reviewed people's responses and placed them in different stages of moral reasoning. And according to Kohlberg, an individual progresses from the capacity of pre-conventional morality, so before age 9, to the capacity of conventional morality, and then toward post-conventional morality. And so you can kind of see this with this chart here. So level 1 is pre-conventional morality. This is where obedience and punishment comes into play, and individual interest. Then with level 2 comes conventional morality. This is more interpersonal morality, so behavior is driven by social approval, and also it deals with authority, so behaviors being driven by a person with authority. And then post-conventional morality includes social contract, so behavior is a balance of establishing different social orders and individual rights. And we have a form of universal ethics where behavior is driven by our internal moral principles.